Welcome back, y'all, to another episode of Bad and Bard. It's your girl, Avi B, and this is going to be a mini episode. I wanted to spend some time in honor of Black History Month, just honoring my people. The last episode with Jesse really had me thinking just about the beauty in Blackness and mostly about how resilient our people are, even when we didn't necessarily want to be, right? Resilience is a part of our DNA. We are structured for survival. And I just really think that we should spend some time thinking about how great we are as a people. Because the society that we live in has spent a lot of effort, time, and energy telling us that we are not great, that we are inferior, that we are DEI hires. I had somebody last week comment on one of my YouTube episodes. He looks like a megamaniac, as I call them, who said that you are, in fact, a DEI hire. Y'all know me, I'm the clapback queen, and I genuinely started to clap back. But then I was reminded of the Bible scripture that says, when you argue with a fool, you can't tell who the fool is. And so I was like, all right, let me not argue with this man who looks like he does math for fun. And I reserved my time, effort, and energy and put them into things that I enjoy doing. So, on today's episode, again, we are talking about the beauty and the resilience of Black folks. Who's Black is a question that commonly comes up, but for today's episode, I'm focusing my efforts and energy on the descendants of those who are here from the transatlantic slave trade. And I say that because the people who are in the US today, most of us, are the descendants of the enslaved. And that just is different from Black folks who don't have that history. Yes, y'all, there are some Black folks who are not the descendants of slavery in the US and in other places as well, all over the world, right? There are Black people who have no ties and connection to slavery, obviously. And so when I think about being the living, breathing embodiment of a people who were forced to move away from their homeland and to cultivate and to build and to structure and design this country as we know it, and to think about everything they had to go through, and to know that I am connected to these amazing, creative, brilliant, talented, resilient, hardworking people just does something to my soul. And, it reminds me that there's absolutely nothing that I cannot do, right? If I am the descendant of a person who lived through that experience, there's nothing that I cannot have. There's nothing that I am incapable of doing. I am equipped. I have everything that I need in me to do what it is that I need to do. And it really just it excites me when I think about it. I want to spend some time talking about slavery. And to talk about slavery is to talk about both Black and white history, right? Because it is American history. Slavery is not just in existence of Black history as we know it. But I want to talk about a particular facet that mostly does not get discussed, and that is the anxiety, fear, and paranoia that slave owners faced at the time, as a result of being fearful of what the slaves would do, as a result of being afraid of slave rebellions and slave revolts, as a result of being terrified and oftentimes unable to sleep because they were so afraid that their slaves were going to cut their throats in the middle of the night or do something to them and their families in the middle of the night. There have been letters found in the U.S. archives from former slave owners, and they discuss the feelings that they felt at the time, feelings of unease, agitation, agony, extreme paranoia. They describe their experience as slave owners with a sense of, like I said, extreme paranoia. Their chests felt constrained. They had headaches and unable to sleep. Like, these were real words used by slave owners to discuss their experience. Now, obviously, that wasn't enough to stop them from profiting off of our Black bodies, but to know that we cause this fear counters the narrative that slaves were meek and docile and weak and fearful, right? If we were causing fear in these people, that was based on something. They knew who we were. We were about that life. We've always been about that life. And that life is the freedom life, the fight life, right? To get what's ours. And again, so exciting to know that that is our history. Is enthralling to think about this particular aspect because it doesn't get told. Um, there are so many counts of slave rebellions where slaves were like, no, 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 I don't have to tolerate this. There is, this theme that we hear about with Harriet Tubman, freedom or death. Give me freedom or give me death. And that was not just Harriet Tubman. There were so many slaves who that was their motto. That was their life. That's what they took on. There are accounts of over, I think, 1,000. Yeah, during the 1850s, roughly 1,000 slaves escaped per year to the north, to places like Canada. And so, no, we don't get told about the slaves who escaped slavery. We only get told about the ones who were there on the plantation and who did the work and who did what they were told and so on and so forth. But when you dive deep into that history, there's a large number of them who were like, no, give me freedom or give me death, give me nothing. And I think that that sense of resilience still lives with us, is still breathing in us today. Give me freedom. I want to talk just very briefly about the Stono Rebellion, which happened in South Carolina. There are several accounts of slave rebellions where they were like, okay, we're not going to accept this. Here's how we're going to fight back against this institution that I'm no longer going to be a part of. I want to talk about it. It happened on September 9th, 1739. Slave rebellion in South Carolina, on the Stono River. Roughly 20 slaves gathered at the Stono River, which was less than 20 miles from Charleston, South Carolina. Many of us have been there before. And what they did, they went and got some guns. They went to a firearm shop and armed themselves. They shot and killed the shopkeepers, and they got their weapons. They got their gats. And they said, okay, now we're going to take what's ours, or now we're going to get revenge, ultimately, is what they decided to do. And they walked to the house of a slave owner, Mr. Godfrey. They burned his house down, killing him and his children. And this group grew, right? They were a growing group. So it went from 20 to roughly 50 slaves marching over 10 miles, killing between 20 and 25 white people. This crew, thinking about the way that they grew in number, and thinking about the bravery and the resistance that it took to say, okay, whatever it is, give me, again, freedom or give me death. And they were willing to take that call and to ultimately stand up for themselves and to fight back. And, when I think about that resilience, again, I think about who we are today. Now, ultimately, most of them were killed or captured and sold back into slavery, with the exception of one of them, who remained a fugitive for nearly 3 years before he was captured. So yeah, this is a different aspect of what we get told about slavery. There were so many slaves who decided that they did not have to accept the conditions that they were being subjected to, and that they were going to take a stand and fight back. They were going to get some sense of their identity back. And a lot of the people in this rebellion were particularly, when they were in Africa, I think they were from Angola, a lot of them were former army men. And so they knew what it took. They knew the strategies and tactics, right? And above all, they were organized. They came together with a plan. They thought it out beforehand, and they attacked. And I think about that today. Where will we be in this moment in history? What will our ancestors, what will our descendants be saying about us? I think about that every single day as I am preparing for work and, doing the things that I do. What will the people that come after me say about me? What will my grandchildren and my children's 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 children say about me? Would they say that I am meek and docile and weak, and that I accepted the conditions of society today that tries to oppress Black people and tells us that we're just DEI hires and tells us that we're worthless and just gives us the bottom barrel? Or will they say that I was a freedom fighter, that I used my voice, that I used my work, my hands to get freedom or nothing? Give me freedom or nothing. And, that is also what fuels me to do the work that I do as a civil rights lawyer. And I want to ask you, what will your descendants say about you? And I'm not saying in a way that you have to be a freedom fighter marching on the front lines, because we understand Black women taking a rest. I get it. Black folks is resting right now. But I want to challenge you and say, what will the people that come from you say about you? What will they know about you? What characteristics will they say? Would they say that you were resilient? Will they say that you were brave? What will those characteristics be? So, yeah, with that, I will leave it there. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to this mini episode. Remember that if you are listening and you are a descendant of the transatlantic slave trade, that you too are resilient and that you are equipped. And on that note, I will see y'all next time.